Welcome to the Los Altos History Show. Most of us know Deer Hollow Farm from weekend visits to see the animals, the garden, or walk along the trails. The farm was once part of a large ranch. Tonight, our guest is George Parham, longtime resident of Los Altos and former president of the Rotary Club. He lived on the ranch for 37 years, from 1937 to 1974. Welcome, George.
Hello, glad to be here.
You've had quite a bit of experience in the foothills. You have seen the changes from grapes to apricots to subdivisions and from wagons to tractors. I hope you'll tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I grew up there, as she said. It was a great place to grow up. My first recollection when I first heard about it was my father telling us one summer, he came and sat on a bed up in the mountains and talked about this wonderful ranch with horses. We had these two old horses, Blackie and Midnight, and we had the cows. We had places to ride, and it was just a marvelous experience to think about.
Yeah, I imagine so. You told me you were about 8 when you went to the ranch. What were some of your first memories, and can you tell us a little bit about it?
At 8, we played a lot. Mm-hmm. And for instance, we would go into the bigger hay barn and we got so we could go clear up into the rafters and do somersaults down into the old hay that was down in the bottom. We never got to do that after the hay was real. When
you say big barn, you mean the upper barn, the one at the foot of the trail?
Well, that's what yeah, there's a white barn, milk barn we used to call it, and then the upper barn, the big hay feeding barn.
Tell us some of the images you still carry from the ranch, mornings, evenings, anything that is a vivid picture for you.
Well, my life was so much different than the children growing up right here today. I would get up very early in the morning, first off. I hated to be the last one up. And I'd go down to the barbecue area, right where Jasper's house is, what they call Deer Hollow Farm now, and build a big fire. We used regular oak logs and the whole bit. And then I would usually go hunting, and took my little dog with me, and we'd take off. And I'd come back, and if people were up, we'd all have breakfast together. In the evenings, one of the things I remember most and is most pleasant is we all sat around together in the evening. The cook stove was right there, so we had a big stump, and we'd all sit around that stump, and the folks would have a drink, and we'd talk about what went on today and plan the next day. And part of the cooking was always done with these big frying pans, believe it or not.
That's a big one.
And we had 2 of them, and we used a lot of big ceramic pots and things like that on this huge barbecue.
Did you do some of the cooking?
Oh, yeah.
As a child?
Oh, absolutely. And we'd cook quail and deer and or rabbits, whatever we had. One of the things that we used to get a kick out of is sleeping up in the barn, up in the white milk barn. Go up there and we'd burrow holes in the hay again. This was before it was really good hay later on. And it was just a wonderful life. We used to actually fish up there, which you can't do anymore.
Was that in Permanente Creek?
Yeah, yeah. They used to catch steelhead up there.
What are some of the special memories you have of particular events?
Well, several. One is putting a rattlesnake in the refrigerator, which my mother found to her chagrin when she opened the door, and it came alive kind of and fell out. Another one is probably the worst day of my life, literally. Growing up there, we raised our own hay, and we had a really old truck that made lots of noise coming downhill. Just ground and ground and ground. So, first load of hay in the barn. And my job was to sit in the pickup, and I was a little tiny tot, youngster, and at the far end of the barn I would pull on a rope which pulled the hay up into the barn. We'd drop it. We have one load of hay in the barn. The truck's going up to get the next load. And my instructions were to empty the pickup before the load came down again. So there was a comic book on the front seat next to me, and I read the comic book instead. And pretty soon I heard the truck come down, starting, you hear it a long ways off. So, uh-oh. So I take off, and I got to the first gate by the pig pens, and I happened to look back, and here's half a rope hanging behind me. And I thought, uh-oh. And I walked around, and my glimpse of the barn was about as bad as any young boy should have to see. The whole barn was cocked over, leaning. The whole roof had come down into the barn. I walked around and looked inside. The inside pillars were all pulled over. While the truck is grinding down the hill. And I couldn't stand it. I was just panicked. So I finally walked down to meet the truck, and got on the running board, and told my dad I'd pull down the barn. And he came up and he took one look at it when he finally got up there. And all he said was, "Oh, nuts." And he walked away. That was a bad day. I've never forgotten that day.
I imagine they never let you forget that day. No. You even had roundups, right, once a year?
Yeah, we did, every spring. We had about 35 cows plus their calves, and we'd always have a bull or two. And that was always a big day. We'd invite friends, and actually sometimes we had more horses than cows because people loved to rope in the corral. And but the little people, the young folks, would haul the tools back and forth. We had our own branding iron. This was an earlier model, so we had the fire going, and all the people that were connected with it. And after the roundup was over, the kids would get into the calf roping. A wonderful time. And then we'd all have a big barbecue after that.
So now, did you only brand the first-year calves?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, every year we brand and go through the whole routine with the vaccinations and the ear tags and everything else you do with the branding. So
you were talking about horses. You brought some spurs here, too. Could you show us those?
Well, these were again, we're talking about growing up in a different world. These were my first spurs, so you can tell I was pretty young. They're kind of sad shape now, but that's what I got. They were so much fun as a child to get things like that. These are the ones I used years and years and years after that. These were actually my father's before that. One of the best experiences talking about things that I got was one Christmas. I think my best Christmas present ever was waiting for me after all the presents were opened, and we looked over behind the tree, and here was a .22 rifle, which I used forever and ever and ever still have. That was a lot of fun.
What did you hunt?
Mostly rabbits with the .22 and quail with a .410. At that time, the trappers came in. Dad allowed trappers to come in and were trapping coyotes and foxes, primarily, and bobcats, and took them up to parts of San Francisco alive. And that made it great for the rabbits. So I knew every rabbit on the ranch. Most of them got away. It was a great time.
Did you ever have hay rides?
Well, Easter time was another special event. In fact, we still do it at one of my nephew's places. The whole family gets together, and of course it's a great place to hide Easter eggs. It goes on and on. So when it's time to actually hide the Easter eggs, I hope there's no little ones watching this show. Anyway, we'd have a hay wagon ride, and everybody gets on the hay wagon, of course, and takes off, which clears the area for us to go ahead and hide the Easter eggs.
So it was just diversion.
Yeah, exactly. And then we go to Montclair School with a hay ride, and certain occasions whenever, for I guess fundraising days or something, I can't remember now. And usually at that time it would be a tractor, but originally it was horses.
You took the hay wagon down for the kids at school.
Yeah,
I see, I see, yeah. When we were kids, we used to play in the creek. Did you play there too?
We played in the creek a lot. We used to make little dams, and we had some, well, not exactly reeds, but they were hollow, very tall weeds, And they were in segments, so we'd cut them up and make pipelines and canals and diversions and all kinds of things for us kids, and it was great fun, great fun.
But my guess is that kids didn't get to play all the time. What were you expected to do for chores?
Well, besides cleaning out the pig pen, which I had mentioned before, we used to have to get into the water tanks, which we had a lot of water storage up on the hill. And some of them were up about 18 feet tall, and others were lower. But we'd have to go down inside of those things with brushes and scrub brushes and buckets every year and clean out the water tanks. The one chore that, about the only one I can think of, I really didn't like was working in the vegetable garden. And we had a vegetable garden that was close to an acre, actually. It was It was large. And we had every kind of vegetable there was, I think. My mother used to can a lot and put up things, and string beans, and but it was not a job that kids like to go down and pick, berries. It's so boring. And we had some of the most wonderful tomato fights that you ever saw.
Tomato fights?
Tomato fights. Until the hammer came down again, But,
now, was that garden near Jasper's cabin, or was that down by the creek?
Well, it's as you come into the ranch, it was on the left, and it's below the house where the ranger is.
Yeah, right. Okay, good. Yeah.
And we had an orchard between that house and the barn, and so we had about everything we needed. We had chickens up above, and we used to sell some of the eggs, but we'd also keep some of them under water glass during times of the year when the eggs stopped being produced. So
keep them under water glass?
Right. We'd have them in big ceramic tubs and lay the eggs in very carefully, and then you keep adding this gelatin kind of what we call water glass, and it cut the air off, and they kept a long time. They weren't as good as fresh, but they were eggs.
So cold storage.
Yeah.
Yeah. As you grew older, how did your life change? What did you learn how to do, and how did you spend your time?
Well, a couple of things. We had a forge and a blacksmith shop, and I loved to work in the blacksmith shop. I've made things all my life with the anvil and the old forge.
Where is that today? Which building is that in?
Well, if you're facing the door of Jasper's house, across the road to the left, right against that creek, there's that shed there that we built. But the forge and all the blacksmith equipment, most of it was there when we got the place. And we did everything. Besides the obvious fences and then water lines and whatnot, we would do our own, I'd do my own wiring. I wired that shop, in fact. We'd just go to the nearest either transformer or where it came into a building someplace and string the wire through the trees. We built things. Whatever had to be done, we were very independent.
You were telling me about electricity.
Yeah.
Tell me the story about the electricity.
When we first moved there was no electricity. There was no gas even. We had kerosene lanterns. And we actually, first we just slept in sleeping bags down around Jasper's house, but eventually we got a little more sophisticated and got gas lights. And then at some point, Dad found out that for every appliance, he would get so many feet of wire, and including telephone or electric poles. PG&E had some kind of a program. So Dad being in the dairy business, we had a freezer in the barn, we had a freezer in the upper barn, we had a freezer in Jasper's house, we had refrigerators, we had electric stoves everywhere. And so we finally got electricity, and then eventually we got rid of some of the extras.
Well, it would take quite a few appliances then to get enough electricity for that ranch.
Yeah,
you had a lot
I'm sure
of acres.
we maybe had to pay for some of it, but it helped. And originally, all the heat, like where the little house is still today, the big old house that was there was just one huge cook stove, the big old black stove in the kitchen, and a fireplace in the living room. And I remember in wintertime, some of our best winter vacations were up there at the ranch, and we come in at lunchtime, and the kitchen would be, all the windows would be covered over with vapor on the inside, because Hannah would be cooking. Mm-hmm. And then at night, upstairs, the water would freeze right next to our bed. It was cold.
Yeah.
And speaking of Hannah, the Andersons lived there almost since '37 until we had to get off. And every day we'd be out working. She'd bring her Swedish rolls and coffee in the morning and in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. It was wonderful. We had, just a 10-minute break.
Yeah.
About 10:30 and one at 3:30 or something like that.
Right. Those are the kinds of things you remember.
Oh, yeah. And she made butter, and she'd let the butter get a little sour. Well, butter was always kept in the milk was kept in the milk pans until we'd skim the butter and make the butter. By the time she got around to it, sometimes it wasn't as sweet as it could have been, but it sure made good rolls. Yeah, a special flavor to them. Yeah. Very good.
What a wonderful place to grow up.
Oh, yeah, it was.
To show our viewers a little more, we're going to roll a tape of John Jonigan showing us Jasper's cabin.
Great.
We're very happy to have a guest from Deer Hollow Farm. This is John Jonigan. John, welcome to the show.
My pleasure.
I understand that at the farm you are sort of a jack of all trades. You do some counseling, some teaching, some fixing things, some feeding the animals, and what else?
I'm, like you say, I'm sort of a jack of all trades. Actually, I started as a counselor. I went from there to part-time maintenance to now I'm the full-time maintenance person. The things I do, I open the farm, I deal with the feeding, care of the animals, repairing anything that breaks. I act as a docent with the general public, answering questions, and sort of just busy. Something always, and each day is different.
Keeps life interesting, yeah. And what about these buildings? Were these buildings here?
Okay, other than the cabin, which is one of the original buildings and the oldest building on the farm, the buildings around us are pretty much as they were. Their uses changed. We use them for, as an example, we have the office, which was at one time a carriage barn. If you look at the front of it, you can still see the shape of the original carriage doors, how they were cut for the carriage. The next building to that would be the apple shed, which is used for drying apples or drying fruit. It is now used as a museum. And then across we have the building which we call the blacksmith shed, and that's what it was.
Well, we're particularly interested in the cabin. If you can show us that, we'd appreciate it.
I'd love to. So we can just step inside. And
okay. This room is really interesting, and I'm sure there's a lot to be said. Could you tell me a little bit about why it's set up the way it is and about the people who lived here?
Yeah, well, a little historical background. The cabin, when it was built, was a one-room cabin, and it was used mainly by the hired hand. And over the period, there was probably 3 individuals who lived here. And some of the changes, there were some various changes that took place over that time. Probably one of the most significant, if we look around, and we can see that during the restoration, they tried to get it back to look as it did during that period. One of the things that they discovered when they were doing the restoration was that there was some wallpaper, as an example right behind us. There was wallpaper which they discovered after they removed some newspaper. So the walls had been covered with newsprint, and underneath that was wallpaper. Thinking back to how that came to be, there was one individual, I believe he was a second hired hand, who lived here. And I understand he was a deaf individual who went away and got married and brought a wife. And she decided that she wanted to make it give it a little more feminine touch, because the the place is rather rustic. And as we look around, you can pretty much see that the amenities weren't as great as we have now in our homes. It was, we can look around and see that. But she added a feminine touch by adding the wallpaper, and I believe she got that from one of the Grant family members, and I think they refer to as, I believe it's Aunt Sarah, who provided the wallpaper.
So the same wallpaper might have been used in the Grant home.
Right, and may have been used here to, like I say, by the individual's wife. And as we look around, we also find that since there was no electricity, so most of the reading, as you notice, the table is placed by a window where the individual could sit and read the newspaper or write. And as they try to get it pretty much like that, they brought in items that might have been used by a person during that period, such as the ink pot. On the table, you'll probably see some bottles, which they may have had a little spirits in it. There'd be the bread would be cut here.
And so over on that corner, on the opposite corner there, what is that?
In the opposite corner is the larder.
I mean the thing with the handle.
Oh, on the table. Okay, the thing on the table, that's a coffee grinder. So they could grind their beans for coffee. And then beyond that, you'd also find that on the wall there's an abalone shell. So that was used as decoration. And that, again, was part of that feminine touch to kind of decorate the cabin.
Where do you suppose they got the abalone shell?
Well, being that we're fairly close to the ocean, they probably was able to pick it up there somewhere. And then as we look around the cabin further, we find that the stove, which is now with the help of the Grant family, Lewis and Virginia, who were very helpful in the restoration of the cabin.
Now let's see, they're the grandchildren, right?
They're the grandchildren
of the original
owners. And with their help and from recollections of their time as being children here, they were able to do a lot of restoration based on their information, and that's how we came to have the type of stove. They found one that was from that period.
So it's got the tea kettle, the eggs, the skillet, the big pot.
Right. And because you remember, the stove served more than one function. It served as a cooking, also warming.
Yeah, that amount of wood was going to keep them warm in this canyon?
Yeah, it gets very cold here, and that was one thing here that you would probably, that stove probably got a lot of use.
They probably stayed pretty close to it.
Right.
Yeah. And what is the thing hanging on the wall near the door?
Okay, it's like a popcorn popper, but it was probably used for a different function. And during that period of time, they could use it as a bed warmer, which you could get coals from the stove, and you could rub the sheets before you got into the bed.
I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about that second room there, which I guess wasn't part of the original cabin.
Right. The second room was added. This was basically a one-room cabin. That second room was added about the time of the second owners of the property, which was the parents, and that was added probably about 1937.
Oh, so modern compared to the rest.
That's very modern.
Could you tell me a little bit more about what's happening today on the farm? What happens at Deer Hollow?
Okay, Deer Hollow Farm is now part of an environmental education run by the City of Mountain View. And what the programs here we have now, we have during the school year, we have schools that come here and they go over, learn about farming, they go to the garden, which they learn about plants, they learn about the animals, why the farms were here, a little historical background, and also get a chance to get close to animals that they may not normally see in a farm setting.
Well, John, thank you so much.
Well, it's been a pleasure to show you around and see what goes on here at Deer Hollow Farm.
George, does that cabin look familiar?
It certainly does.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your memories with us. We really appreciate it. And I hope viewers will go up to Deer Hollow and look around.
Well, it's really been a pleasure to review all those wonderful memories we had.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching the Los Altos History Show.